Hi, I'm Steve Costello, and we're here to talk about the Gift of Life Marathon. Believe it or not, this will be the 20th annual Gift of Life Marathon. Can't believe that we've come this far. When we started, it was just a little blood drive, went on to set national records for blood donation in a single day in the city of Rutland, which is pretty amazing when you think about the size of this community. And here we are 20 years later with the 20th anniversary edition of the Gift of Life Marathon. It's coming up soon. The first day is December 6th, and then the 14th, 15th, and 16th. You can go to redcrossblood.org to make an appointment or call 1-800-RED-CROSS. And this year we're going to have a really special gift at the Gift of Life. For anyone who donates or presents to donate, we're going to have a copy of Stephanie Schaefer's new book, Without Any Warning. And it is a powerful book, I can tell you. It's filled with the whole story of Stephanie Schaefer's injuries and how she's overcome them with her family and with the medical profession. And it really is truly a moving piece of writing and one of the best things I've read in a long time. So Steph, thanks for being here and thanks for continuing to support the Gift of Life Marathon and blood donation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love getting to support this event.
For folks who, there may be a few people out there who don't know who you are or why you're here. I imagine most people do, but let's start, just with a little brief overview. Tell us about what happened to you 4 years ago last June.
Yeah, right. I mean, like you said, I won't go too much into it because I'm sure most people have heard this many times, but I guess it's been 4 years ago now. June 2018, I was on a vacation with my family in the Bahamas. We went on a tour boat on an excursion like everybody does on those types of vacations, except 5 minutes into our outing, the boat exploded underneath my seat. I lost both of my legs. I had a spinal cord injury, brain injury, internal damage, broken bones, pretty much everything you can think of. And because of that, something that played a big role in my surviving was not just the doctors and the surgeons, but it was blood donations and getting transfusions pretty much daily, which led to me being here and getting involved with this event.
It's an amazing story. Amazing that you survived it, and your dad is here today with you. And I know so many members of your family had played really important roles in the initial, craziness right after it happened. Your sister, your mom, your stepfather, and then your dad came down and made the decision to get you out of the Bahamas and go to Florida. All those decisions played roles in you surviving this.
Yes, I mean, the importance, I think, of every tiny decision in those moments was more than maybe even we were recognizing at that time. But looking back now, you wonder what could have happened if one decision had been made differently, and that's not an outcome that I think any of us want to think about. So a lot of it comes down to my family really stepping up for me in that time, from my 13-year-old sister to my dad flying out of the country, to get there when I needed him. So it was everyone played a really important role.
Right, and blood donations, as you said, you wouldn't be here without them.
Right.
How much blood are we talking here?
All I know is that my records in Florida, which is the first hospital in the United States I was treated at, say for a very long time that massive transfusion protocol was in place, which basically means give them as much blood as you can, as quickly as you can. Wow. And that was for a while. I mean, when I asked my family about it, because I was in a coma for about 4 weeks, they tell me they remember seeing me getting transfusions every single day. And then throughout my recovery, years later, I'm getting transfusions again, and this time it's a clear memory of me having that. So it's definitely played a huge role in the last few years for me.
Right. Okay. We're going to start with the book. The book came out last August, I think.
Yes.
And it's been selling really well, huh?
It has been doing really well. There's been a ton of support here, and it's been selling internationally, and it's just been crazy to see something I worked on for so long selling and being read by people out there. So it's pretty incredible.
If you're just joining us, every single person who shows up to donate at the Gift of Life Marathon is going to get a copy of this book, and it is powerful. It is meaningful. My wife has read it and said, that the military should be buying copies for every single wounded warrior,
Yeah.
for every guy or girl who gets injured in combat, they should get a copy of this book because it will help them understand how to overcome things. But I think there's so much more to it. I think every teenage girl should get a copy of this book.
I think so. Mm-hmm.
It's really it's about overcoming life and overcoming the challenges of life, not just whether it's an injury like a series of injuries like you had, or much simpler things. There's information in here that will help people.
Yeah, I mean, I came across those messages while I was writing it. It started as just a book about what happened to me, and then I realized, it was basically my therapy was writing this book. And so the things that I was working through came out on the pages, and it wasn't just learning to live without legs or learning to live with a spinal cord injury. It was, the fears that I think are in a lot of women about how to look, how to be, how to act, all these pressures that we put on ourselves, and not just women, but, I think all teenagers put a lot of pressures on ourselves. And I was 22 when I got hurt. I wasn't a teenager, but I was young, so I think it's got some messages hidden in there between all the bigger parts.
Right. Let's talk about the process of writing this. You clearly were working on the book while you still were recovering.
Mm-hmm.
Your recovery really lasted 3.5 years,
Yes.
really, between all the surgeries. How many surgeries did you have?
I think between 40 and 44.
Wow.
Yeah.
And everything from, leg stuff to what else?
My legs, my arms, my wrists, internal surgeries, things for skin and muscle and bones. It was really head to, I would say head to toe, but that's a little ironic considering. But yeah, it felt like every part of me was getting worked on for, like you said, over 3 years.
Right. So you started writing the book. Did you know it was going to be a book, or were you just writing for yourself initially? Or
I started as a book, so I didn't start right away. I think it was, I don't even know, maybe a year and a half after. But I knew I wanted to tell a story, and I think a lot of that came from it happening not in the United States, mm-hmm. and feeling like there wasn't going to be any permanent proof that this had happened to us and that it was our story, and we weren't going to let it be brushed off, because it was, there was a life that was lost and all of our lives were changed, and I thought this just needs to be out there so that it can't be pushed away. And that's, I think, was my initial thought. And then I realized, also, this is a story that doesn't happen every day.
Right.
So it gave me an opportunity to do what I had always loved, which is to write and to really create something for myself and to put out there. And I think because I did it early, it was easy to write, and it just came out on the pages.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I read a very early version of it, and the final version of it is almost identical. I don't think the editors of the book changed a whole lot. It mm-hmm. really, you're a natural writer, I think, and it really is told in a heartfelt way, in a really powerful way. Was it hard to put all of the, there's a lot of emotion in this book. And like you said, from your 13-year-old sister to your mom and stepdad and dad and your brother, your whole family went through an enormous amount of change here. How hard was it to put pen to paper and talk about those things?
Talking about my emotions, I think, was easier. It was very relieving to get it out. I'm not someone that likes to talk about my feelings very much, but I like to write about it. So this was a way for me to express it, and it was a way for me to move on. I think it really helped me put it behind me. I would write a chapter, I would edit it, and then it was almost like whatever I was writing about in that chapter, I could then say, okay, now I need to move on to the next one and just move on from it. But writing about, I think, the pain of my family was definitely harder. Writing about the loss of the other woman was harder. I interviewed people because I knew I was going to write it all myself, and I wanted it to be exactly what they were thinking and feeling. So sitting down and asking those hard questions was definitely emotional, and imagining what everybody else had gone through was harder for me. You know, I felt like I could be strong for myself, but it was harder to know that people I loved had had pain too.
Yep. I want to just touch on one thing that you and I have talked about a couple of times, because something you just said really brings it up in my own head. You are not the same person today that you were when you were 22 years old when this happened to you.
No.
And I mean that in the most positive way. Tell me about what you were like as a 22-year-old woman and how you've changed as a result of this.
I think before this accident at 22, I think I was pretty insecure. I think I was doing what everybody else did and not ever really wondering, what do I actually like? What do I actually want to be doing? Who do I want to be? It was more like, what's the status quo and what makes me cool and what should I look like for other people to like what I look like. It was never really about me, and it was definitely from a lot of insecurity, and I was also very shy. You definitely wouldn't have found me here at 22 years old. But this, I think it made me so much stronger. It comes from, I think, having to maybe advocate for yourself in the hospital. Not that I didn't have family doing that with me too. It came from realizing that I would never ever look the same as people again, and that I had to realize that that was okay, and that that could be just my version of beautiful if I let it be. And my confidence definitely grew, and I think it made me a better person in a lot of ways.
You touched on appearance, and in the book there's a couple parts that are quite funny, actually. Talking about your first feet, your first new feet, artificial feet, and having to use a wheelchair. What was that like to confront those things, and how has your views of those things changed over time?
I remember when they brought the first wheelchair into my room, and I was still pretty heavily set in denial. And I was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, I think, and I was in my hospital, but I wasn't even strong enough yet to sit up on my own. And yet, still, when they wheeled this wheelchair into my room, my very first thought was, why did they bring this in here? I don't need this. Like, my thought was, I'm gonna get legs and I'm never gonna need a wheelchair. Having a wheelchair never crossed my mind. I didn't want to be in it. I didn't want to be seen in it. When I had pictures, I would crop it out. You know, it was just, when I would go to a restaurant, I would transfer out of my wheelchair and get into the seat and be like, can you push this far away from me type thing. And now it's just, I don't really think about it. I think that I've found a community of people my age who use wheelchairs. I think it's just what gets me around. To me, it's now more of a sense of freedom than it is a sense of limitation, and I don't worry about what I look like in it. And it's the same for legs. You know, they were strange looking to me at first, and now they're just my legs.
Yeah. One thing that we've talked about before, relating to the legs, you not only have the loss of your limbs, but you also have a paralysis issue as well. So people often seem surprised that they don't know that necessarily, and they're surprised to see you in the wheelchair. And you've talked about that kind of being a frustration for you. Where are you at this point? You know, I know you were told you would never walk again, and you've walked. I've watched you. You've done it. Where are you in that process? It's a continued thing, I assume, with rehab and continuing, assistants learning how to do that again.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we were talking about having surgeries for 3 years, and the last surgery I had was essentially because I was in an extreme amount of pain every single day because I had issues with my leg muscles. And so that surgery corrected the pain. I'm in so much less pain ever since that surgery. But it also made me a lot weaker. So that was tough to accept after that surgery, that after years of hard work, that some of that had now been lost because of a surgery that I chose to have. Surgery that I did need, but it was hard to come to terms with.
Sure.
But it is something that I still do. I still make it, we still make it a priority. If someone was to come to my house, they would still see me upright and walking around the house. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a lifelong process. Hopefully we'll just keep getting stronger. It's just, having patience with that.
Yeah, Great. If you're just joining us, I'm Steve Costello, and we're talking about the Gift of Life Marathon, which is coming up on December 6th, 14th, 15th, and 16th here in Rutland. There are appointments available for all 4 days still, and you can make an appointment by calling 800 Red Cross or visiting redcrossblood.org. This is the 20th anniversary, and we are going to be giving away Stephanie's new book to everyone who presents as a donor that day. It's a beautiful book, well written, and really powerful and moving. So we hope you will join us, and we hope that the book will inspire you. And we're here talking with Stephanie about the book and about how she's overcome some really amazing challenges and how blood donation has helped in that. We kind of talked about some of the hard stuff, but you've come so far, not just physically, but emotionally, and you found a whole set of new careers.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about some of those. People are, every time your name comes up, people ask me, what's she doing now? And they're very interested in your success, frankly.
Yeah.
People are really invested in it, I think, in a lot of ways in the community. So you've got a few things going, a lot of different things. You just got back from Costa Rica.
I did.
Tell us about that.
So I sort of partnered, my friends and I, we partnered with this group called Wheel the World. And it's a startup. I think it's a fairly new organization. It's basically a travel agency, but it is all for accessibility. So it's for people who need mobility aids, for whether it's a manual wheelchair, or power wheelchair, a walker, people that can't just book a group tour and keep up with a group type thing.
Yeah.
They also do completely personal trips. So say it's my family and I'm in a wheelchair and we want to take a family vacation, we could book through this group and they take care of all of the accessibility issues for you. And
That's
so
really neat.
they asked my friends and I to go, and this trip to Costa Rica, which was not a hard decision to make, and to look at it and say, where could they improve? What did we think? How are they doing? Those type of questions. And so we got to go on this amazing trip with this group. There was 5 wheelchair users and 1 who was not a wheelchair user, and then our tour guides. And we went all around Costa Rica. We went, zip lining. We went to hot springs. Went to the beach. I went adaptive surfing. We did all the things that you don't think you either can do, or that if you want to do them, it's going to take basically months of planning and a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of questions, and they just made it so easy. So it's this really amazing group, and so I was happy to have found them.
That's really neat. And you have developed kind of I don't know how to describe it, but it seems like from what we've talked about off camera, you've got kind of a portfolio of different work that you're doing in income streams to support yourself. One of the most interesting ones probably is working for Kim Kardashian indirectly. Tell us about that.
Yes. I signed with an inclusive modeling agency, and I have done modeling for Kim Kardashian's clothing line. So she did an adaptive line, and I was lucky enough to be one of 3 models chosen. And again, there was 3 models in wheelchairs, and I thought that was pretty incredible that this major brand was thinking outside the box and thinking there's this whole community that has been ignored for a long time, and let's finally include them. So I felt really honored to be a part of that. And I think, that's just going to keep continuing, which is exciting.
Right. You also recently filmed a television show, pilot.
Yes.
What's that all about?
So I filmed a pilot. We have an update soon, so fingers crossed for good news. It is basically an idea that the producers had during, the worst part of COVID, where I think everybody was maybe feeling lonely and kind of isolated from each other. They had this idea to film a show where every episode is just one that they see as an incredible story, and then sharing messages that relate to all of us, so that whoever's watching can see oh, that's an incredible story, but the things that they're sharing at the end, that relates to me type thing. So it's supposed to be the show that relates us all through the overall themes of hope and resilience and things like that. So I filmed the pilot episode out in Oregon, and we are very hopeful that soon we will begin filming the rest of the episodes.
Neat. Very cool. And more to come on who's going to pick it up, where it might air, et cetera.
Yes.
Okay. And you have a new job.
I am that too. I am working part-time remotely from home. I realized how much I loved writing while writing my book, and so it just felt like the perfect fit to start working as a copywriter for a marketing agency. So that is another part-time thing I'm doing.
Fantastic. That's great. You mentioned this a little bit before, and I want to go back to it. You talked about how you, when you were younger, really cared about appearance, and not for yourself necessarily, but for how other people would perceive you. How has your experience with the explosion and everything that you faced after that, how has it changed how you think about your own appearance and other people's appearance, and just the whole concept of beauty and fitting in and all those things that we all worry about?
I think I felt so strong throughout so many moments of this recovery that was what started to matter to me more, and it's also through things like this, volunteering at Gift of Life or going to visit someone in the hospital that's newly injured. It's those things that I think make me feel beautiful now. Like, I think it's doing something that makes me feel good. That's now what I sort of define beauty as. And so when I meet someone who you can tell is just a genuinely good person, like, that is my new definition of, I don't see it as much as a physical thing, I think, as I used to.
Right. How do you think that you found the strength to get through this? I mean, that's a broad question, but it's hard to believe that someone could go into this situation so young and face so many obstacles and come out of it in such a positive way.
I think at the beginning it was really just trying not to look too far ahead. And it was just, here's one diagnosis, I've got to get through this. And here's one surgery, I got to get through this. And it was just kind of taking it one step at a time, and also having a support system with me every step of the way. My family was always there. And I feel like I just said, like, the moments that make me feel good of just being a good person, I feel like from acting that way through it all, I really was able to connect with my healthcare professionals around me to the point where they were never just healthcare professionals, they became family. And so I think it was just the people around me, and just, doing a lot of therapy throughout all of it, and just trying to keep in mind the good that I still had and the things that I still wanted to happen for me, focusing on all of that and not just focusing on the bad stuff that was happening.
Were you like a super optimistic person before all this, or did this kind of evolve?
It's funny 'cause my mom and I will talk about that, and not that we would ever want to imagine this happening to anyone else, and my siblings and I will talk about it too, but we'll say, I have 2 siblings, and we'll all admit, they're like, if this needed to happen to someone, the only one of us that could have handled this is Stephanie. Like, I don't know why. I think I've just always been very, like, neutral. I think I've never been,
Not too high, not too
yeah,
low.
I think I've always been able to get through things very evenly and neutrally and without these extreme emotions. And I think that is truly because I was having the most extreme emotions I've ever had in these moments. And to think if I was someone that was maybe naturally more like that, it probably would have been even more extreme. So I think I just, we don't know what it is. We just know that we all agree that if it needed to happen, I was the one that was going to get through it.
Yeah, that's neat. You mentioned family. Obviously, your family, from the minute this happened to today, your family has played a huge role in that. In the book, you talk about, in particular, I want to just touch on one passage. You talk about your sister, who was at the time 13. Mm-hmm. It sounds almost like she took control of the situation when this happened. Like, when pandemonium is occurring, she was the one calm voice who was talking into your ear, telling you to stay awake, etc. Mm-hmm. What was it like to be where you were and in that situation, to have a 13-year-old basically the voice of reason and calm.
I mean, I truly, to this day, still believe that Brooke saved my life. I mean, there's not really a doubt in my mind that that happened, because I was immediately, from the time of the explosion, I was like pretty far gone. I mean, I think I was in extreme shock, but people looking at me thought that I was never even going to make it to shore.
Right.
And that's not just my family thinking that, that's strangers we have heard say that. You know, they said, when we saw you, we thought you were just going to die on the boat, you know, you weren't going to make it.
Right.
And my sister was with me in the truck going to the hospital, and she was the one, you know, keeping my eyes open and telling me not to sleep and feeding me sips of water, things like that. And the one thing that I can remember from that moment, because like I said, my memories, the visual memories are gone from my mind at that time, but I can remember feeling that there was someone there. And I think if I hadn't felt that, it probably would have been a very different ending. And the fact that she was able to do that for me is just spectacular for such a young kid. And I think she would have quite the future in a career and something like that if she ever wanted to.
Yeah, that's neat. We're almost out of time, so I want to just again hit on a couple of quick, you know, nuts and bolts things. Gift of Life Marathon is coming up December 6th, 14th, 15th, and 16th. All four events have appointments available, and you can make them by calling 800 Red Cross or visiting redcrossblood.org. This is the 20th anniversary Gift of Life, and we're actually going to have something kind of cool that we haven't talked about yet. At this year's drive, over the years, we've worked with a lot of different people at the American Red Cross, and folks who have been donating for a long time know a lot of these people and got to know them well through the Gift of Life and other events. We have people who have not worked for the Red Cross for 15 years who are coming back for this drive to volunteer on it,
Wow.
just because it's the 20th anniversary. So a lot of people who've been involved in the drive in the early days are going to be there. Mike Egan, who many Rutlanders will know, Christine Fournette, who was a longtime Red Cross employee and left about 6 or 7 years ago, retired. She's coming back, and we're reaching out to a whole bunch of others that we expect will be there because it is the 20th anniversary event. And again, if you come to the event and present to donate blood, you're going to get a free copy of Stephanie Schaefer's book. And I guarantee whether you read it yourself or give it to your teenage daughter or son or just about anyone else, people are going to find it meaningful and helpful, and it's a really amazing story. I sometimes look at you and still can't believe that you're sitting here, knowing what I've learned from both the book and from talking to you. So we've talked about this before, and I want to end with a really simple question. At times you have talked about everything you've been through and the positive things, a new career, new opportunities that you never would have had. And the question is really simple. Are you actually glad this happened to you?
In some ways, yes. I think, I'm not sure if that's because saying I'm not would mean I still wish I was who I was, and I don't wish for that anymore. But, I wish the pain of everybody else hadn't happened. I wish the loss of life hadn't happened. But I am glad that I was able to change and to grow in the ways that I have.
Yeah. In a nutshell, what's the message of the book?
I think it's just that no matter what happens to you, and you can get through it, and that a change in life doesn't have to be a bad thing, that you can always find new ways to have happiness and new ways to define yourself, and just surrounding yourself with the people that you love and love you is, the most important thing.
It's a great message and a great way to end it. Interestingly, I interviewed Bobby Paquette, who's a longtime volunteer at the blood drives and many other places in Rutland County, and I asked him what the message of his life is, and it's a completely different story, but it comes down to the same thing. It's about pushing through and not giving up, basically.
Yeah.
So it's a great message for anyone of any age. So, Steph, thanks again for being the ambassador for the Gift of Life. It's really helped rejuvenate the blood drive and help save hundreds of lives, just like yours, and who knows who else.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing it. Thank you for watching. Please join us at the Gift of Life, and we'll see you there.